Welcome to the Kindness Project, the podcast designed to share stories of kindness and share how kindness can make positive change in our world, one small act.
In this week's episode of the Kindness Project, we talk about swans, zoos, and we have part 2 of our interview with Mike Brace.
Welcome to episode 294 of the Kindness Project. I'm joined by a man who don't even know what episode we're on, and a girl who don't even know what day it is. It's Saturday. And it's the start of September, which is always a weird time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's like we've had quite a chilled summer, and I don't know about you two, but I'm sort of desperate to have a bit more routine in my life again. Do you know what I mean? It's like I like summer as an opportunity to just go, right, okay, let's do a bit of travelling, have a bit of fun, relax a bit more. Things are a bit more calm, even though I've been sort of working in between. But I'm sort of head back in the game now in September. How about you guys? What do you think?
I'm all right. I never broke my routine. I never went away or anything like that. I just carried on plodding along.
It's not work all, isn't it, Charlotte? Head down, but nothing changes. Let's get on with it. Let's get down to business, Russ.
You got stuff to do. You ain't got time to be swanning off.
How do you feel about that? Do you think you need a break, or do you need to like get your head down? So, did you use the phrase "swanning off"?
Yeah.
I love a bit of swanning off.
You don't like swans?
Yeah, you ain't got time to swan off.
This fallacy about me not liking swans has gone on for long enough. Would I choose to give one a cuddle? No.
Probably not.
Would I?
Oh, would I?
Replication.
Comedically.
No.
I'm pretending that I don't like swans.
Shock and terror on your face.
No. There is no shock and terror when it comes to me and swans.
I remember I got attacked by a swan in Barking Park once.
Go on then. What's the story with that?
I tried to run away, but he caught me.
You know what? I seem to spend half my life sharing stories of you running away from animals, Russ. I remember that time when you was it poked a wasp nest with a stick.
Yeah. I tried to run away and they caught me.
You're not having much luck in your life with avoiding animals that try and catch you, are you?
Mummy used to tell a story about our granddad took us to London Zoo. Oh no, the city zoo, you know, the local one. And I put my hand on the horse's nose and it bit me.
Right, so
that's not where you ran away, is it?
No, did you run away?
I didn't run away. No, I probably cried though.
You ran away when it bit you?
No, I probably cried.
Probably cried. So you've run away from a swan. You've run away from a wasp or multiple wasps. It weren't just one wasp.
Let's have it right. I had stings all over me that day.
I know. I remember. I don't remember, but I've done the story enough to say that it's ingrained. Well, it's like one of those memories where you go, I sort of remember it, but you don't remember.
I don't even properly remember what I did to upset them.
You poked them with a stick, bro.
I don't think I poked them up. I pulled the stick out of the ground, thinking I'm going to walk along hitting things, and out come loads of wasps with it.
Yeah, that's because the stick was in a wasp's nest.
The moral of the story, don't be so silly and pull on the stick.
Yeah, and don't hit stuff with sticks randomly, I think is the other moral of the story. But we'll let you off, Russ, because it was a long time ago. You were only 42 or 41.
That was last week, mate.
Have you got any good animal stories? So, question of the podcast, not that we're really doing question of the podcast anymore, listeners, is what's your best animal story? What story have you got involving an animal? And my one is clearly the one with the swan, where we were in Italy. I wanted to have a little swim in Lake Garda, and a swan that got stuck on on the beach in the sand, kept on easing at me because I was going too near him, and I didn't have a choice because that's the only way to get into that particular part of the lake. What's your favourite?
I don't particularly have any, I don't think.
You've not got any animal stories.
See, the thing is, people will be like, oh yeah, I remember this from when I was little, I remember that from when I was little. I don't think I have any solid memories before I was like 10 years old.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Most of the stuff I remember is stuff people have told me and then I've sort of created in my head.
What animal stories have you been told about you that resonate? No? Well, I've got one story about Charlotte when she was a kid. I remember taking her to Colchester Zoo years ago, and there was a gorilla who it was raining
with the
blanket over his head,
told me this story
and
before.
literally you were obsessed with it. You were like,
I don't like gorillas with blankets.
it's true. It's true. So
Didn't his mate try and steal it as well? I remember that being a detail of
no, that was at London Zoo. See, all of the animal, particularly gorilla related things is coming back.
Yeah.
About the monkey that lived.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, right, okay. Well, I wasn't there.
The monkeys were there.
Right, do you want to tell the monkey story?
This is actually a lot more recent. So I do remember this.
Was this I was 10, so you remember?
And this was the one where we were at the drive-through, I think, and we were in the car. And the monkeys were all coming up, and they had to be in a cage, whereas most of the other animals were like roaming and stuff. It was roaming. It was a large area still, but it was like in a cage, and they were like, once you go in here, you got to be really careful with the monkeys.
In a cage, but you drive your cars through the cage.
Yes.
Oh, they steal the. They steal all the stuff off your car, don't they?
Yeah,
One of them a whip snake.
They stole the thing that sprays the water, and then they pulled out the nozzle. They were just rubbing their junk all over the front mirror window.
Yeah.
Nice.
I found up about taking my car because my car was a lease car. I found up about taking mine whip snake with the kids, which is just up the road. And they said to me, no, you're not insured to go in there.
Really?
Yeah.
Can't go in as a far.
Because specifically because of the monkeys ripping stuff off the car.
How about the kids? I mean, I'd probably be more worried about that.
No, the kids are pretty civilized now.
You don't know. How about Russ? He might poke it with a stick. Can you do me a favour, Russ? Can you phone your insurer or your lease company and go, excuse me, I've got a reputation. It's an old one, to be fair.
Next time we meet like this, I'm going to turn up with a stick.
It's over the shoulder, hold it like that.
Yeah, that reminds me like a film, and I can't remember where somebody just walks around with a stick around their shoulders. But just phone your insurer for me, Rats, and go, it is a historic reputation of me just either pulling sticks out of stuff or hitting stuff with sticks. Am I allowed anywhere near my car or not? And when they say no, you're going to have to say it. On that note, let's instead of talking about Raz and sticks, let's deliver some good news this week in the form of Pizza Edition. That was too far. Pizza Edition, and we've got the kindness of a pizza delivery driver leaves you struggling mum in years. Do you want to tell us a story? Charlotte, as it's the podcast, we've run.
I was just scrolling down for it and I noticed it. You got it. I was scrolling down and I noticed it had exactly how long it takes to read it, which is really helpful actually. So 2-minute read.
2-minute read.
2-minute read.
2-minute read, and hopefully, how long listen? We don't know, do we?
Probably less.
Probably less. Less than a 2-minute listen. Let's give it a go.
A struggling Lancashire was shocked at the generosity of a pizza delivery driver after her 11-year-old daughter unknowingly ordered a pizza on her tablet. Francesca Emmett, who had recently returned from a holiday, who was facing financial difficulties, found herself unable to pay for the pizza her daughter had ordered. Distraught, she broke down in tears at the door, promising to scrape together the $18.50 the next day. Fortunately, the driver was understanding and spoke to his boss at Pronto, their favourite pizza restaurant. He reassured Francesca that she need not worry, and a few days later she received a note through her window containing $40 from the pizza. $40, it's £40. So used to us having American stories. As soon as I saw a sign, I was like, it's dollars. From the delivery driver. The note expressed his empathy and explained that although it wasn't much, he hoped her daughter had enjoyed the pizza. Francesca, overwhelmed at the driver's kindness, tearfully recalled the incident. She had initially asked for the pizza to be returned, but the driver called the owner of the restaurant and explained the situation. He assured Francesca that she could pay the next day and left the pizza with her. The note she received later touched her deeply. Grateful for the driver's selflessness, Francesca managed to track down the individual and express her gratitude. They met up and the driver revealed that the sight of her daughter crying had deeply affected him. He shared that he too faced many challenges in his own life. This heartwarming story serves as a reminder of the power of kindness and compassion. It also highlights the struggles faced by many individuals and families in today's society. Acts of generosity, no matter how small, can have a significant impact on those who are going through difficult times.
I absolutely love that story, and I mean the interesting thing about that, and I think part of what I've learned from sort of interviewing so many people on the podcast and sharing stories is you. Without doing that, sometimes it's really easy to live in your own bubble and not realise that there are people going through significant challenges. Charlotte and I, Sophie, went out the other day and trawled the streets of where we live, collecting money and food for people who need it. And I know that the people who delivered the food to the local food bank, they were really grateful for what we've done, because there are people out there who are struggling to put a few coppers together to pay for a pizza, like something a lot of us might sort of take for granted. So if we can do something to help, and clearly, pizza delivery drivers are not going to be the most affluent people in the world, unless I'm wrong. However, the fact that he made a commitment to her to say, "Here's the pizza, and I'm going to help you out with another thought," I absolutely love. So well done, that pizza delivery driver. Absolutely love that. The next article is from the Northern Echo. So we've gone from pizza addiction to puppetry addiction, the act of kindness that led to a puppetry business.
An enterprising Northeast woman has found her voice in business, and it all began when she discovered a creative way to communicate with a dementia patient. Actor, carer, entrepreneur Becky Ashton smiles as she remembers the spark that led to her launching her own business with a family of hand puppets. Having trained in performing arts and spent years as an entertainer, Becky had moved into the care sector in her native Weardale, and those she looked after in their homes included an old lady with dementia. Try as I might, I couldn't get through to her one day, so I decided to try something different to make the connection, she recalls. She picked up one of the woman's socks and used her acting skills to bring it to life as a hand puppet. It appeared from behind the door, speaking a funny voice, and the woman began to respond. As she gradually opened up, Mr. Sock would play along, gently unlocking the doors to conversations about her memories.
Interesting.
There was definitely the spark I needed, says Becky. She wouldn't respond to me, but she would respond to Mr. Sock, and it was magical to see it happen. When she went from being a home care assistant to working in care homes, Becky continued to use socks as puppets until she decided a purple fluffy monster called Baby Hudson was introduced alongside more puppets, which were added to Becky's team of quirky assistants. The puppets started singing and building up their parts. I couldn't believe how much they helped communicate with people. As word spread, Becky was asked to take her puppets into other care homes, as well as Dementia Cafe at St. Catherine's Church in Crook. That evolved into performances at local events, and she built a large set for her character. It reached the point at which she wondered if she might make a business, and in June this year, she took the plunge by leaving her job as a carer and launching a full-time business called Puppet Pals. There's now an ever-growing family of puppets, including Baby Hudson's sister Liberty, Cornelius the cat, Thunder and Lightning, the twin baby dragons, Stevie the snail, and puppets of colour, Josh and Jenny. It's a labour of love because acting and performing are in my blood, says Becky. She has been immersed in show business throughout her life. Her parents met at Butlins in Finley in 1972. Her dad was a theatre technician and her mum worked in the holiday park shop before also learning the ropes as a sound technician. Her father, Dave, later became based at Billingham Forum Theatre for a while, but the couple also travelled around the country. They toured the Nolans and became friends with a host of stars, including Morecambe and Wise, Frankie Howard, Phil Silvers, Barbara Windsor, Sid James, Val Doonican, Freddie Parrotface Davies, Bernie Clifton, Bobby Thompson, The Little Waster, and Ken Dodd. Ken Dodd was especially close. He was always just Uncle Ken to me, says Becky, who was among the mourners alongside her mum at the legendary comedian's funeral in 2018.
As well as theatre dominating their professional lives, the family has also made a strong contribution to community arts. Due to their long-standing commitment to the Phoenix players in Stanhope, Miriam was made president and Dave became vice president. Miriam was also part of Stanhope Choral Society for 35 years. It was no surprise then when Becky inherited their love of arts, starting off in Holiday Park as part of the entertainment team, and then moving on to everything from kids club karaoke, game show hosting, and parties in the dark. She went on to play Lala, the comedy ugly sister, in a production of Cinderella, and also worked on the Polar Express. So massive contribution to the arts from the family, and an involvement on there, which actually ended up in Becky helping people with dementia launch Puppet Pals and just helping people with dementia communicate. Because I think that's part of the challenge, isn't it? Just making sure that if somebody's got dementia, you keep those lines of communication as open as possible. And in actual fact, Russ, I'm gonna send you a sock, and I'd like you to generate your own sock puppet, little Russ, who walks around carrying a twig, not a stick. You've got a sock puppet on your hand.
When I was talking of trawling the streets, I felt a bit bad because you trawl the streets for kindness. I do it just robbing people's sticks.
What were you saying about that, Charlotte? You steal people's sticks?
Yeah, randomly. I'm a real stickler, but if I see something in the street...
No! Oh,
if I see something in the street, I have to pick it up. I never lost that curiosity that I had when I was a kid like that.
That stick.
I wonder if that's a good stick.
Stick.
Good stick.
Oh, no, it wasn't.
Good stick.
It wasn't just sticks. It led me into trouble a few times as well.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that, but that was a long time ago. What constitutes? I mean, I didn't realise Raz was our resident stick expert. What constitutes a good stick, Raz?
Well, that was a broom handle with the wasps. That was a broom handle.
Then, isn't it?
Well,
that's a handle clearly isn't a stick.
That's a good stick.
What, a broom handle?
Stick is something wood. Stick is something wooden and long.
Is that all a stick is? I thought we needed something.
Let me just clarify with you, though. I never lost a stick. When I ran away, I still held on to it.
And on that note, we won't do that other news article because we're going to move on to the rest of the show. We've got the amazing legend of a human being, Mike Brace, on this week. Mike has lived a fairly amazing life. He was involved in an accident early in his life that meant that effectively he was blind, he was blinded, but went on to have the most incredible experiences, both inspiring himself, helping other people, being really community focused. And I just wanted to get on and share get him on the podcast and share his story. So let's hear from Mike.
One thing I wanted to ask you that I'm curious about is because I did the research for today, and even though we've known each other personally for quite a while, I wanted to sort of explore some elements of your life that just I think our listeners would benefit from hearing about. Talk to me about Vision 2020, because I know you did some work with them. Talk to me about the challenges that organisation was designed to deal with and the progress they've made.
Yeah, the context of that was 2001. You had a situation where the medical professions to do with ophthalmology, optometry, orthotics, etc., they were pretty fractured. They really didn't speak to each other very much. You had social work going through quite a difficult time looking at balance between what occupational therapists did, what specialist rehab workers for the blind did, and then you've got children's services. So when adults that were talking about rehabilitation with children, it was habilitation because there was nothing to rehabilitate. There was confusion, there was system problems with the registration.
So nothing was aligned.
And then you had the voluntary sector, which I think at one stage there were 733 charities dealing with people with sight loss or blindness.
Right.
So 733 charities.
Huge.
Total, and none of them they were all competing with each other. They were saying, well, we are the voice of X, Y, and Z. So a international organisation called Vision 2020 basically was looking at eradicating avoidable blindness worldwide.
Yeah.
And the notion then was that they would set up 2020 units in each of the countries around the world.
Right.
Australia, I think, were the first to set up a Vision 2020, and the UK then were the second. And I was at that stage of my job that basically, it was challenging. I was an assistant director, so I'd really made it. I was on a really good salary, but I'd got to the stage where I wanted to do something that made a difference, that started to give other people with a sight loss potentially a chance to have those choices, many of which I'd managed to have.
When you're thinking about leaving that quite comfortable position that you'd worked really hard to get to, what were the factors that made you think I'm doing it, and what ultimately was the main decision factor that you thought about?
I think probably, whereas I'd become a senior manager, which was my choice. I like most people, you do the job and then
you get promoted.
Because basically you've had either good or bad experiences of managers. So if it's a bad experience, you think, I could do the job better than they could. If you have had good experiences, you think, well, actually, I could give my benefit, my knowledge and experience to someone else and improve the service. So we're going up and up and up, but as assistant director level, it was budgets, it was staffing, it was dealing with disciplinaries.
It's a different job, isn't it?
And I suddenly thought, I've probably got another 10, 15 years of work. Do I want to do this, all the way through to then? And I thought, well, probably not. And the interesting thing as well, as having a disability, the last thing I ever wanted to do was to work in anything to do with disability.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I didn't want to get pigeonholed,
Yeah.
Oh, well, the reason you're doing this is because you're disabled.
Or the reason you got the job as well. I mean,
exactly. So I'd been averse to doing anything to do with a job with that. I'd been doing all my sport with blind and trying to get the sports club then to provide those opportunities that I'd set up in 73, etc. So I had that side of it, I thought fairly well under control. And then suddenly they said, we're setting up this. And again, there were 3 or 4 organisations that were saying, well, what we could do is form ourselves and combine our 4 or 5 charities into this Vision 2020.
Yeah.
And I was applying for other senior jobs, director of social services in 2 or 3 different authorities, and I got a runner-up on 2 occasions, and I thought, perhaps I've hit the glass ceiling in that. And then this opportunity came up, and I thought, again, a bit like the guide dog, perhaps I should think about my prejudices and experiences and see whether I could use that in a better way. So I applied and got the job, but I still wanted a bit of a life belt. So what I managed to do, because I think I was fairly well appreciated in the job I was doing, I managed them to agree a 2-year secondment.
Okay.
So they
you could go back
kept my job if the charity then didn't work out, and then basically I could go back to my old job if that happened. So for me, that was a really good life belt.
Yeah.
And then you're working from home. I had no staff. There was just me, literally just me. I had
a bit of a change in circumstances.
Exactly. I had my reader who I used to have a reader, because even in the social work job, virtually everything was on paper, was written, and therefore I had to have someone that could come in and read the reports or help me look at court reports, etc. So she actually, bless her cotton socks, said, "Oh yeah, I'll carry on being your reader." So she would come over and read stuff from me from Greenwich over to where I lived in Hornchurch, and that was fairly liberating. So I then had to learn how to do accounts. I then had to learn how to do all sorts of different skills in terms of writing stuff and reports and stuff like that. And lots of travel, or national travel. So you're travelling up to Scotland or Wales or Northern Ireland and things like that. So again, that was a slightly different focus from, and the whole idea was to get the voluntary sector, the social sector and the medical sector to actually speak together.
Yeah. So
we formed an alliance. We have 54 national organisations in membership, right across the medical and social and the voluntary sector. So we had all the big National Institute for the Blind and Guide Dogs and St Dunstan's, or Blind Veterans as are now, and all the key sort of players of the Pocklington Trust, etc. They were all members and formed the committee. They were my sort of trustees, came from the different organisations. And that really started to push. So we then managed to get research subgroups. We had a children's subgroup. We had all sorts of groupings that could then focus on some of the key issues across the sectors.
And in terms of, I'd imagine that alignment project is certainly a long-term one. How aligned do you think the sector supporting blind and partially sighted people is now?
Well, it took a bit of a stumble during lockdown, because basically the funding organisations, because they all funded Vision 2020, and because of the financial issues, they all stopped. So Vision 2020 then ceased. It got dropped, but the notion of working together was then
quite embedded.
So now there's about 10 organisations that have formed an alliance around children's services, which I still have a feed into. There's another alliance looking at employment and various other things. So So the notion now of a separate grouping is
there?
less.
Yeah.
It's less than it was.
Yeah.
But there is still bits of it now.
Still to do.
Going back, sort of thing.
Yeah, but the conversation started, right? And there's more alignment than there.
Yeah.
I mean, something as big as that. That's potentially a 20, 30, 40 year project, isn't it, to get it properly aligned, if anything. I want to talk sport.
Yeah.
So talk to me about your, as you said, you started skiing 10 years after you lost your sight. Was that 10 to 12 years? And how did it turn into something you did? Now, talk me through that journey.
When I left school, there was absolutely no sporting much of any description available to people that weren't in a specialist school setting. There were 3 or 4 blind cricket teams, one in Worcester, one in London, and a couple of others dotted around.
Yeah, because there's a blind college in Worcester, isn't there? Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
And there's one up in Shrewsbury, it's in Hereford now, and there was one of the schools in London, but that was it.
Yeah.
So nothing really organised, not very competitive, mainly rambles and stuff like that. So a group of us left school, 4 mates, and we started to go to help set up an evening class at Holland Park School.
Okay.
So this was an ordinary evening class, and the same as anyone else that does languages or whatever.
Yeah.
And they set up a blind football evening class, 5-a-side blind football evening class. We all signed up to it and thought, wow, this is fantastic to actually get a mainstream, paid for, that you pay for. And we met a guy there, and he said, well, there's not much else going. So 8 of us met in this pub, and we thought, this is ridiculous. This, we must,
there's got to be more
about it.
Yeah.
So we stuck a fire in the committee and set up the Metro Sports Club. And we did that in 1973. And within a few months, we had probably 50, 60, 70 members all wanting to join us.
So there's a massive appetite for it.
And then suddenly someone said, one of the rehab workers said he'd been over to Norway and been to some event called the Bartestolen Ski Week for the blind.
Right.
And it was set up by a blind man in Norway 10 years earlier that basically thought cross-country skiing with the tracks, etc., ideal for the blind. Would we think about going? And I thought, he's bonkers. Blind people skiing. And I also remember the last day of the Lemmings documentary I'd seen. You saw these things dropping off the cliffs.
You know what? You know what? I love. There is something about Scandinavia and the Scandinavian attitude to life that I just think is a bit mad, but he's just like there's a guy we've had on the podcast before who invented an app. Funny enough, is a blind guy, invented an app called Be My Eyes.
Yeah,
that I think we've spoken about before.
Yeah.
And when we interviewed him on the podcast, it was so funny because he said, I had this idea. I didn't know how to make it. I didn't know how to code or anything like this. But I was in Copenhagen and read about this coding, like I can't remember what they call them. They go along and they go, I've got an idea, and then the coder might says, and he said, Chris, it was €50 to attend. But it was free beer. So the best I was going to get was my app done. The worst I was going to get was really pissed. Actually, both occurred. So he just got really drunk and got his app made. And I just like that. Like, I don't know why, but it just made me really chuckle.
They said, blind people skiing, and my mentality was, as I said earlier on, well, if someone else can do it, then I'm going to be able to do it,
actually,
and I'll have a go.
Yeah, and I get it. So you went along.
So 15 of us went over there.
Yeah.
Absolutely, the freedom of movement. Normally, if you're blind, you're tagging on behind a dog, or you're holding someone's arm, or you're using white stick, and you're largely reliant for your movement, which can be a bit stinted. Suddenly, you're on these skis, and you've got a guide that you've got to trust to give you the lefts and the rights and the ups and the downs because it's cross country, and you're out. I'm a Londoner through and through, Hackney boy. And you're suddenly out
You're out in the
on a
open,
mountain.
right?
There's no sound, there's no bird song, there's no insects because it's high up.
Yeah.
And the silence was just almost spiritual. It was just, and suddenly you're doing this wonderful exercise. You've got freedom of movement. You're interacting with another human being who's acting as your eyes and almost becomes an honorary vision impaired person because they're your eyes. So you've got a bond and some sort of link that was almost very strange for me at that stage because most sports I'd done hadn't really relied on someone else then helping me. I'd been doing the cricket or the football. It was down to you to do it all.
And what's the right balance between that guide helping and supporting you, but also, as you say, giving you that freedom to do it in your way? Is it like, where does the guide stand? Is it like,
they're your enabler. I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, that's and to some extent that's been part of my philosophy now, that enabling someone to do something that they could do or want to do or could dream about was so important. And these people have just been so special for me, for my dreams, to then be able to go and do these mad things over the years that I've done. I mean, I've done 54 different sports over the years, most of which have been absolutely rubbish. But I'm the one that's decided that that's not for me. In order to do all these things, I've then been enabled in many cases by people even more bonkers than me that have enabled me to do it.
What's the sport you very quickly thought never again? What's the one, like skiing was the one where you thought, I'm really loving this? What was the sport where you go, this isn't me?
Abseiling, I did get a bit twitchy. It was a 200-foot cliff, and the guy rather wonderfully, because he knew we were blind, had arranged it fairly near a road, so the blind may not be able to see how high we were, but you could hear the road 200 foot below. And therefore, that for me. And then someone said, "I'm going to do your safety line. I'm competent." And I'm thinking, but if he gets it wrong, who's going to pay the price?
Exactly.
So I think abseiling was one of the ones that I was probably most twitchy about.
I've only done urban abseiling. I chucked myself off the orbit and off of buildings in town, and it's not a natural experience.
No. Walking off that cliff and walking down backwards.
I mean, like, whereas I can imagine being out in nature and being skiing quite meditative, the last thing you do when you chuck yourself off of something is meditating.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just not. But no,
I think abseiling is certainly the
one that you wouldn't do. So started skiing, went over to Norway and had the experience. What happens next?
And then about a year after that, they suddenly announced that the first winter Paralympic Games for the disabled is going to be held in Sweden, in cross-country skiing and alpine skiing. And for the first time, 1960, the Summer Games for the Paralympics started. But in 76 was the first time the blind were included in the Paralympics. And the first Winter Games were also then going to be in 1976.
Right.
So there were three of us in London, two mates of mine and myself. We thought, hold on, we've done skiing now twice, cross-country skiing twice. Why don't we put ourselves forward? We started to train with the army down in Aldershot.
So this is one of the advantages that Scandinavians have got. They've just got got the climate, like
snow helps.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that definitely helps.
No, there were a plastic cross-country track down at Aldershot where the army was. So we used to go down there and train on this. and then I had a selection meeting down there, and we got selected. And I've been writing a book about the history of my club 50 years on, and we've only just realised that myself and my two friends, both of which have sadly passed away very young, but the three of us were the first blind competitors to compete for Great Britain in the Paralympic Games ever.
Amazing. So when you say you and your two friends, were you the founder members of the Metro Sport Club?
Yeah, we set that up in the pub.
Yeah.
And put the fiver in. And
the new book's about the Metro Sports Club.
It's about the 50 years of the history of that, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the subtitle was "The Power of Sport to Change Lives."
Oh, I love that.
And it really covers the trips abroad. We were the first club. We went over and did a tour of South Africa to reintroduce blind cricket post-apartheid over there.
Amazing.
And that was just...
But the point that, the theme that we've talked about is that, and again, you talked about in your sort of, mentoring, and is that empowerment. Don't tell somebody what to do. Just give them the opportunity to change their own lives through support. It's that element.
And the trip that we went on in 1974 to the Weiterstolen, that just became almost part of your DNA. So every year since then, I've been organising trips over there, and I'm going next year, which will be the 50th year.
Oh, amazing.
And this year we had 32 blind people going over there to try skiing, many of them for the first time ever, because no one never thought they could do it. And the number of people then that come back and back and back because they get that experience, they get that camaraderie, that link to a guide that they've never met before, a Norwegian student or a member of the army or whatever.
They act as the guide with your guide, Mike.
Sorry?
Do you tend to, once you've got a guide, do you tend to build a longer term relationship with your guide, or does it tend to change?
It depends on what level you're then skiing at. So most of them may be on a social contact with them if they've met them for the first time and then may not ever meet them again.
Right.
We then started to develop links with guides who then saw that we were competitive. We've been to the Paralympics. I met a Norwegian businessman who acted as my guide in 1977, and he was a top businessman, a managing director of ICI Scandinavia, married to an English lady, and he and I then really hit it off. He then heard about our experience at the 76 games. We were badly prepared, badly equipped, all sorts of things. And he then said, well, if you're serious about it, I'll help you out. The next games are in 80 in Norway. So basically I'll help.
Sponsor.
And he remained then as part of our group. He then acted as a guide to the skiers, brought in his friends. Then they brought in his son, and his son then went on to help with a fund, and they're still involved. So his son and his dad's now sadly passed away, but his son's involved in his 60s now, and they all then got all our guides. So all of our guides then from 1980 onwards were all Norwegians, all through that link, and they flew all over the world, to Japan, to Canada, to America.
But supporting Team GB athletes.
They were our guides in the races, so we paid for them to fly over there and do that, and then we would train over in Norway. So they would set up training camps for us, and my original guide from 1974, he's then stayed in touch, and he's going to come back and guide me for my 50th year.
Oh, amazing! What a legacy!
I love that. He's fantastic, and So I'm really looking forward to that. Whether that'll be my swan song or not, I don't know. But
well, I think the interesting thing, Mike, is that continuing to break barriers and prove what can be done might be a new challenge, right?
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
sort of what might be next. Look, I think what I've got. What I'm really conscious of is literally we've just covered the surface of your story, and I think I might have to invite you back to dig a bit deeper into some of these elements. But I know that you've been involved in sport for years. If you could really sort of encapsulate what you've learned being an athlete, a Paralympic athlete, and being involved in the Olympic movement, what do you think you've learned the most about being part of that community?
I think it's been interesting. I think being an athlete, the self-discipline that you have to learn and abide by has been a fairly massive boon for me in my career, in my employment, in my relationships, etc. That A, you have to work at it, and B, you have to really put the effort in, and all that self-disciplinary bit of it. I think the other bit of it is that it has the ability to change lives. If people have got that whole concept that they start to manage something they never thought they'd be able to achieve, whether it be a very personal goal within athletics or something that they never thought they'd be able to do, that really does add so much value to
and that's it. I mean, the point you made earlier about the reasons you do it, I think the starting point is always the battle with your own head, isn't it?
Yes.
It's always that element of going.
We put the most barriers for ourselves.
Yeah,
100%. And when I'm talking to people, I'm saying, we moan about the barriers that other people place upon us, and they're very true. But you've got to start with examining your.
You've got to look in the mirror, haven't you?
Yeah. And really say to yourself, okay, am I part of the issue? Is it my attitude to myself?
And I've realised, Mike, that I'm clearly comfortable in this conversation because I've used the phrase "look in the mirror" with absolutely no irony at all. Apologies for that.
No, exactly. I'm a mirror gazer.
You got to look in the mirror.
I've got an audio mirror, a visual mirror.
How does an audio mirror work?
Well, you're basically listening back to what you're saying. Almost, you're thinking. Does that sound like bull or?
That's true. I had this image of an audio mirror going, "Chris, you're so ugly."
Well, sometimes that's the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you've just told a porky, with all the politics that we're around.
Yeah, it's true.
Audio mirrors might be.
We could do with an audio mirror actually. I think particularly politically.
And if you play back what someone said 20 years ago and 10 years ago, then there's very often some very big home truths to be looked at.
Yeah, but I think it's that element of learning from that, I suppose, is the big factor. And the bit that frustrates me sometimes is again going back to not wanting to get too political about it, but I think some of the frustrations is when politicians don't look in the mirror, and can't admit, can't put their hands up and go, actually, I probably didn't handle that as well as I can across the political spectrum, not relating to one particular party.
And it's the notion that you're in the role to do something for other people.
Yeah.
And then the issue is about the self-interest. And funny enough, I mean, full circle really, I've been a volunteer in the sporting world for years. I've been running sports, been Paralympic chairman, all as a volunteer, all unpaid. Yeah. And the issue is that it's not a selfless role. You're there because you want to get something from it, but at the same time, getting something from it often means then giving something to other people.
I think it starts with giving back, though, doesn't it?
Exactly.
You know, it starts there. If the motivation's different, it just goes the other way. But I think it's interesting. There's some some roles in our society that seem to motivate people who don't start at that place and they start somewhere else. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I've read your books. I love your books. They made me laugh, even at times when I felt I shouldn't have been. But tell us a bit about your books.
Yeah, again, it started in the 80s, really, when I was, being asked more and more about, interesting contributions to stuff for, different journals and different information. And a publisher phoned me up and said, "Oh, we're interested in doing this a book on X, Y, and Z, and would you be interested in writing a chapter or two?" Well, about an hour later, we'd got off the phone, and they ended up by saying, "Well, this has been really interesting. Rather than a chapter or two, would you ever consider about writing a book?" And I said, "Well, never really thought about it," and went home and thought, "Oh, So I got my typewriter out because there were no computers in those days. So did me typing, got the neighbour to do all the proofreading, sent it in, and they said, "Yeah, we love it, and we'll publish it."
Love it.
And I couldn't believe it, and suddenly had this book being published, and the knock-on effect from that was just unbelievable, because I mentioned the Olympics and the Paralympics. Well, 76 Paralympics got covered by a documentary on the TV called This Week, and they did a documentary and flew a team over to film us, so getting some of this notoriety. 6 years later, doing the book was being sent around for various people, and landed on the desk of the researcher for This Is Your Life, the program that was around them.
Yeah.
And she said, "Well, I know this guy is as mad as a March hare, basically might be worth considering." So the book then prompted the This Is Your Life show, and then that was in the early 80s, and you're suddenly thinking, "Oh, this is fantastic." And the book did well, and then coming to retirement and finishing work and things like that, I suddenly thought, 30 or 40 years on, there's probably more to tell.
Yeah.
And the second book the first book was called Where There's a Will, and it basically conjures up what we were just saying: where there's a will, there's usually a way. And that's been a sort of mantra that I followed. And the second book is called Don't Ask Me, Ask the Dog, because basically situations arose, a bit like the crossing with Izzy over the crossing. People don't think that possibly I would know anything where I'm going, what I'm doing, and would often then ask me and then disregard what I was saying. So I'd say to them, "Well, don't ask me, ask the dog." and so that covers very much those early things with This Year's Life, right the way through to being involved London 2012 and the Paralympics and stuff.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And then the new book, when's that coming out?
The new book should be available by the late end of this year, November, December. We're in our 50th year celebrations. It's basically going through proofreading, and then I'll get a friend of mine to help get it ready for self-publishing on Amazon, both in ebook and in print.
No, I love it. I'm going to give you a magic wand as one of our last questions, and say to you, you can change anything you want about the views on disability. If you had a magic wand, what would you change?
I think it's around perceptions. I think how we often put two and two together and make five. And I know, being a financial advisor, that's probably part of your DNA, you know. Or trying to get the extra.
Mike, that was low.
Yeah,
I mean,
trying to
we've
get
got
the
to.
extra bit.
I mean, I've avoided making any blind jokes all the way through, and
apart from
there's a
looking in the mirror, there's
a sly financial plan at the end.
Yeah, but basically, I think the issue is challenging people's perceptions and getting them to, you know, think about what it is. You know, more people probably have got experience of disability now. It's more in the public arena. So don't make an assumption based on either your limited knowledge. So, you know, generally ask, you know, rather than make an assumption.
You know what? I mean, I'm on a learning journey myself, but one of the things that I've learned, particularly through doing interviews for the podcast, is the importance of curiosity and empathy. Yeah. You know, those two elements, and saying, if I don't understand, just be curious about it. I think is the key factor. So and
want to know. You know, enabling others. You know, getting. I run a charity and to do with people losing their sight, and many of them are newly lost their sight. They're older people. And you know, at times, you know, you've caught up with various things, and then you meet someone who gets so emotional. They hug you as though, and they say, "You spending time with me, talking to me for 10 minutes." And I'm thinking, how pathetic is that? That half an hour's time of listening to someone. Yeah. Why can't we do that more often?
Well, but this is the big thing, isn't it? It's that element of what are we looking for in life ultimately, and it's complicated and nuanced. But ultimately, we want to feel we're loved and cared for, don't we? And if we can be kinder to each other by making sure that we just give some time, effort and energy into just, you know, making sure that people, I mean, my kids are a nightmare because I tell them I love them every day and they go, "Oh, Dad, please don't say that again." But I think when I look back, it's one of the things that, you know, I want them to know that I care but I think if we can do that for others a bit more, that's really good.
And I think that's the crucial line. You know, when you speak to people and you listen to their needs and desperation, and you're thinking, you know, and it really takes me full circle back to these kids. You know, 10, 12, 15-year-old kids, you know, can make the wrong decisions. They can go down the wrong pathway, and someone just perhaps listening to them, perhaps pointing them in the right direction.
Not telling them, but giving them a nudge. Giving them a nudge is the factor.
Exactly.
Mike, where can people find out a little bit about you, your books, and the work you do?
The website is www.mikebrace.co.uk. So that's got some bits on there. The books are on Amazon. So there's Where There's a Will, and there's Don't Ask Me, Ask the Dog. So they're the big three sources really, and there are various other bits and pieces dotted around from talks that I've done. But the
website's really good. It explains loads. We definitely need to get you back on, because I feel like we've done now you've insulted me at the end. I don't know if I can, but there's so much more I want to explore. So we'll get you back on for another interview. But thank you for joining us on the Kindness Project. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Great pleasure, and thanks very much for asking me.
And I don't know whether Charlotte's prepared anything for the end of the show.
You guys can waffle again about whittling.
So here's the end. I mean, what I'd like, Raz, I don't think we're going to get it. What I'd like is a joke about whittling, but it's such a niche conversation that I'm probably not going to get a joke about whittling.
I pulled a joke.
I'm going to get a joke about. Yeah, but when do you stop being a whittler? If you haven't whittled for nearly 30 years, you're not a whittler anymore, are you? You're an ex-whittler. You're a past whittler.
I'm a whittler.
When somebody asks you about whittling, what do you say? I used to whittle, but I don't anymore.
I've tried it.
You've tried whittling, right?
I wasn't an avid whittler. I mean, I didn't wake up in the morning, come in the sweating and thinking to myself, I've got to go downstairs and whittle.
So you're not a natural born whittler. You've tried whittling, but whittling weren't for you.
I've recently woke up in the middle of the night.
Did you join a professional whittling organisation?
Did I what?
Did you join any sort of professional whittling organisation?
Is there a professional?
Were you part of the whittling club?
Is there a whittling club?
You tell me. I'm not a whittler.
No.
Are you going to look that up now? Are you going to Google whittling clubs?
This reminds me of the Satsuma Appreciation Society.
You know what? I would love it, Russ. I don't think it's going to happen, but I would absolutely love it if, for some bizarre reason, you got back into whittling, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And on that note, we'll talk about whittling this week again. It's Charlotte's joke of the week.
You don't want to join my prayer group for woodworkers?
How funny! I was just going to send that to you.
Anybody would like to join your group for woodworkers? No.
It's called A Year of Whittle Faith.
You asked for a whittling joke and there it is. Well done, Charlotte.
I found it online and Mum just sent it to the group chat and I was like, oh.
Right, whittling. Right, we need to, as joke of the week, as we're having a conversation on the podcast, all future jokes need to be about what we're talking about on that particular podcast. So whilst we're playing the audio for the interview, you need to find a little joke that
was a stroke of genius, that. I'm well impressed.
That was really good.
Like, she's not going to give us a whittler joke. I was like, I'm not going to give you a whittler joke.
That was a little bit special. On that note, have a lovely week, and we'll see you next time on the Kindness Project.
Bye.